Part of Exile's 3.27 update is introducing Bloodline classes to the game, allowing you to multi-class on any Ascendancy, and one of the new Bloodline classes is the Chaos Bloodline, accessed by defeating the Trial Master. Now in yesterday's video I covered some new tech that will be possible in 3.27 due to one of the new choice notables on that class, but in this video I'm going to discuss another notable on the Chaos Bloodline, Corruption's Embrace. Now something to note here immediately is that this isn't going to be any kind of league starting spec. Even if you're able to reach the Trial Master and defeat him reasonably quickly at league start, you still need to actually have a lot of equipped items that are corrupted to actually enable this notable to do anything at all, so it's more of a late game thing. Now with at least 4 corrupted items, you activate the first modifier on this node, turning on Shepherd of Souls, which is essentially a keystone-like effect. Previously only accessible from the Yao-Max Accord Unique Scepter in the core game, and this is all about Vaal skills. I'm not going to go into detail about the mechanics of that keystone, but I've already covered it in detail in its own video, which I'll link in the description below if you want to look at that. Then with at least 6 corrupted items equipped, you'll gain Everlasting Sacrifice, which is another keystone-like effect. This one is less isolated as it relates to your energy shield, and it essentially just removes all of your energy shield every time you reach full, and it grants you 5% to all maximum resistances in return for 4 seconds. But once again, I'm not going to go into too much detail on that one in this video because I want to discuss the final modifier on this new notable. You have Sacrifice of Blood if at least 8 corrupted items are equipped. Now 8 corrupted items is quite extreme, that's almost your entire loadout, but the effect gained is quite powerful. Sacrifice of Blood is a new keystone-like effect. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the game as far as we know, but it's possible that one of the new unique items that's being added to the game is going to have this on it. So what does it do? Life recovery from regeneration grants blood barrier while on full life. Maximum blood barrier is equal to 30% of your maximum life, and damage from hits is taken from blood barrier before your life or energy shield. And then there's 50% less life regeneration rate. So this will function very similarly to Aegis skills or guard skills. When your life is full, the life recovery that you would be gaining from regen will fill an extra pool on top of your life, known as a blood barrier, up to a maximum of 30% of your maximum life. Then any incoming damage from hits specifically will be removed from this pool before your actual life or energy shield. Now the downside of this one is quite strong, 50% less life regeneration rate. This makes Sacrifice of Blood a kind of double-edged sword for builds that invest heavily into regeneration, like RF for example, because on one side you're losing a massive chunk of your life recovery due to this downside, but on the other side you can recover so fast from taking damage that you'll be able to pretty much immediately refill the blood barrier after getting hit, so this will just act as an extension of your life. In fact, that's one of the strongest components of Sacrifice of Blood. The fact that even though it resembles an Aegis skill or a guard skill, it doesn't actually have a cooldown or a reset timer or anything like that. It's just always active, and that's potentially really strong for some interactions. One is a skill that actually got buffed in this upcoming patch, Boneshatter, or even the use of the trauma support. The Juggernaut has the Untiring notable, which grants a big bonus to life regeneration rate, and it also makes a percentage of prevented physical damage from hits be regenerated over 10 seconds. Both Boneshatter and Trauma deal hits of self-damage to you on use. So how this node would work with Boneshatter combined with Sacrifice of Blood would be that the incoming self-damage from Boneshatter strikes will remove life loss from the blood barrier, and the portion of damage that you prevent, with mitigation like armor and physical damage reduction and fortify, will stack up regeneration, which will immediately recover the blood barrier back to full again because you're on full life. Essentially functioning very similarly to Divine Shield with Boneshatter when you have a decent amount of energy shield. But you can also just use both of those together, and since the damage from hits is removed from blood barrier before energy shield, it would enable Everlasting Sacrifice to continually proc for 5% maximum resistances, refreshing over and over, so you're able to keep that buff up permanently, which is pretty nice. And while we're actually on that topic, I just want to mention that you don't really need a special interaction like this to get good use out of Everlasting Sacrifice. Just the existence of Blood Barrier would allow Everlasting Sacrifice to proc with the natural energy shield recharge mechanic unless you stand on a damage over time ground effect or get inflicted by a damage over time debuff, both of which will bypass Blood Barrier to deal damage directly to Energy Shield first, which is why it's much more ideal to have a method of recovering Energy Shield outside of recharge, like Divine Shield regeneration or Energy Shield on hit. Now, there are a couple of things I wanted to discuss here at the end of the video. Firstly, Petrified Blood is a bit of a question mark. Now, Petrified Blood says that life recovery other than flasks cannot recover life to above low life. However, if you use a flask to reach full life with Petrified Blood, the life recovery technically would not be recovering life anymore, it would be going into your blood barrier, so that's something that would need to be tested. Second is Dissolution of the Flesh. You can't really use these two together even though they have a lot of synergy. Well, you can, but there's a lot of reasons not to. There's the Petrified Blood thing that we don't know of just yet, and most Dissolution builds want to actually use Petrified Blood because of how those mechanics interact, so there's that. But there's also the fact that Dissolution removes all of your energy shield, so you wouldn't be able to benefit from Everlasting Sacrifice at all. Thirdly, the obvious broken scaling with life stackers. If you're able to reach 15 or 20 or even 25,000 life or more, then Sacrifice of Blood scaling starts to become completely ridiculous because it always scales based on your maximum life. Once you're at those numbers, you're already entering immortal territory, but just having a blood barrier that is larger than an average character's maximum life will be ridiculous. Though, notably, most life stackers use Dissolution, so there's the lack of synergy there with Everlasting Sacrifice. And speaking of life stackers, I must mention the Relic of the Pact, of course, because this one grants the Blood Sacrament skill, which is basically a channeling skill where you sacrifice more and more of your life by reserving it, and you can release the channel to deal a big burst of damage in an area around you. Now, the massive downside of Relic of the Pact is that in order to deal the damage, you need to first reserve a big chunk of your life, and that means that for the moments where you're actually reserving your life, you are suddenly quite vulnerable to being one-shot because a massive portion of your hit pool is missing. Well, Sacrifice of Blood may be able to somewhat provide a solution to that, but you will need to use something like Forbidden Taste to be able to immediately recover to full after reserving whenever your blood barrier actually gets chunked, so that you can recover it back up. Also, there's this thing, which may see some more use in 3.27 and beyond because of Corruption's Embrace, though it does still need to compete with crafted body armors, which is no easy task. Now lastly, I want to note something about Sacrifice of Blood. That's the exact wording that states you must be on full life, not full unreserved life. And this is important because that means that if you have any portion of your life reserved, you cannot reach actual full life, and therefore you cannot recover Blood Barrier. And we know this because of the Immortal Ambition Keystone, which has the same wording. So unless this is changed before 3.27 launches, be aware that you need to be able to reach actual full life to enable Blood Barrier to work. But that's it for this one. I just wanted to touch on this node because I think it's quite strong, but it's definitely going to be much more of a late game spec considering the amount of corrupted items you need to have equipped. This is not going to be a League Start thing at all, you don't want to plan around it for League Start, but there's a lot of potential there for life builds to scale into this in the very late game. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.